The galaxy was wide and endless, filled with ships, stations, and countless human voices connected through feeds. Across the stations, there was one story that people could not stop waiting for. In the grand arena on the glass ring, the war beast stood in bound chains. It was taller than towers, its hide marked with scars of battles fought long before anyone living had been born. Every attempt to master it had failed. Men strong with armor and skill had tried and been thrown aside like dust under its claws. The arena was alive with light and millions were watching from far worlds. Inside the arena, the queen herself, Grace Monroe, stood on the high platform in her silver cloak. She raised her hand, her eyes steady. She spoke clear and strong, so that every listener across the galaxy could hear. She said that the war beast would bow only to one worthy. She said whoever it bowed to with true heart, not fear, would stand as protector of all and give hope to the people. The crowd cheered, but mostly they waited, holding their breath. The first challenger stepped forward, his armor shining. He struck his chest and shouted his name. He charged with his spear high. The war beast struck back with only a single swing of its head. The armored man flew across the ground and crashed against the force walls that kept the spectators safe. Alafa, the crowd was nervous. Another man stepped in. He tried to force the war beast down with a heated blade, but the monster crushed the blade with its teeth and sent him running in fear. One after another, the strongest fell. Not even the captains of great ships had stood more than a moment in front of it. The war beast roared, echoing across the arena walls. The sound reached across the feeds, so that even children hiding under blankets on far colonies shivered at it. The queen did not move. Her face stayed calm, as if she knew the right one had not yet come forward. That was when Cole Mercer walked into the arena. There was nothing special about him. He was a salvage pilot, wearing a shirt torn at the sleeve and boots covered with oil. His hair was rough, and his eyes looked tired. He had not come to fight. He had traveled to the glass ring only to sell old engine parts and pay his debt. But now his steps carried him forward. He was not fast in movement, but there was no fear in his walk. The crowd laughed at him. They called him fool and shouted for him to turn back, but Cole did not listen. He reached the space before the war beast and stopped. Its eyes were fire, its chest larger than any ship's hull. Cole lifted his hands without a weapon. He spoke not loud but soft. His words could not be heard by the crowd, but they were steady. The war beast pulled its head low, curious. For a moment the air itself felt frozen. Cole did not move back. He kept his eyes on it. The monster's hot breath shook his hair and sent dust across his shoulders. He reached forward with an open hand, as if greeting a working horse in a stable. The arena gasped as the war beast leaned down and touched his shoulder with the great crown of its head. Then it lowered lower until its knees bent and its head bowed before him. The feeds from every world went silent. The people could not believe what they saw. Where great fighters in armor had failed, a man with nothing but calm heart had won. The war beast bowed only to him. In the stands, the queen smiled for the first time that day. She raised her hand once more and declared with clear voice that the protector had been found. But in the shadows of the arena, Logan Drake watched with anger on his face. He had wanted the war beast for himself, to break the queen and rule through fear. Cole Mercer had stolen the moment from him. Logan's mouth curled into a cold smile. He would not allow this stranger to keep what he believed was his prize. Around the arena, the crowd still roared. Across the galaxy, the feeds repeated the moment again and again. The impossible had been seen by every corner of humankind. The war beast, which had never bowed to blade or crown, had lowered its head to an ordinary human. From that moment on, nothing would ever be the same. Cole had not wanted the weight of fame. The sound of the crowd still echoed in his mind as he left the arena with the war beast at his side. He had not asked for glory or crowns, yet the whole galaxy had seen him do what no one else could. Ships across the stars spoke his name, and the moment of the bow was replayed on every screen. To the people, he was no longer a simple man, but something more. The Queen gave orders at once. She told Captain Ryan Cross to guard Cole and guide him safely to the Crown World. She feared enemies would move quickly now that Stormback, as the beast was called, had chosen him. Ryan was known for his calm voice and steady aim, and he obeyed without question. Along with him came Nora Lane, a combat engineer who had placed for courage more than for ceremony, and Olivia Hart, a field medic, who never left anyone behind. Together they formed a guard for Cole, though he himself did not act like a man who wanted guards. In the high halls of the ring, Logan Drake spoke to men who followed his will. He cursed the sight of Cole Mercer riding away alive. Drake's pride was wounded, and his hunger for power grew sharper. He swore he would tear the beast from Cole, even if it meant burning fleets and cities. He gathered his ships and sent hunters to the ice rings of Ridgeway, vowing to strike before the Crown World could welcome this new champion. Cole sat on the spine of the war beast as it moved with long steps onto the launch deck that led to the flight lanes. He felt the rumble of its muscles under him and the heat that lived behind its scars. He had no saddle, only a rope tied around a bone ridge, yet he felt more steady than when he had strapped himself into a pilot seat. Nora laughed when she saw him sway with the movement. She said he looked more like a farmer than a rider of legends. He only grinned and said a farmer understood beasts better than any general who barked orders. Their small convoy reached the Ridgeway ice belt. As the first hunter ships appeared, long, sharp vessels slid from the shadows of frozen boulders. Gunfire sparked blue across the black sky. Ryan shouted clear commands over the cum. Cole felt the beast tense, and he spoke to it with slow breath. The war beast surged forward with power that tore ice chunks apart. The hunters fired with torpedoes, but Nora had already strapped shield charges to the beast's carapace. The explosions washed in bright waves but did not break through. The war beast answered with a booming call, its throat throwing a rail shock that shattered a ship into glowing pieces. Cole held fast while the beast clawed at wreckage and hurled it at the enemy like stones. Some hunters tried to board with hooks and lines. Olivia steadied her hands with rifle fire, though she had sworn she preferred healing to killing. Men in armored suits landed on the beast's back. The battle turned close and harsh. Cole fought with nothing more than a salvage hook, pulling one enemy down and sending another falling into the void. The war beast moved like a storm, and Cole moved with it, using its turns and leaps to throw boarders away. Nora burned through a mind controller with her torch just in time to stop the chain that would have blasted them all to dust. On the final wave, Mason Vaughn himself arrived in heavier plate. He was Drake's trusted enforcer, broad as a wall, and cruel with his strikes. He met Cole on the beast's spine, under the glare of ice and fire. The two clashed with steel blades that split sparks across the night. Vaughn pressed with strength, but Cole used balance, letting the great spin of the ring tilt the fight. Vaughn lost footing and was hurled back toward his own men. Cole could have ended him, but stopped with the blade at his throat. For a moment, all watching knew mercy had been chosen when vengeance might have been easy. The hunters broke and fled, their ships burning among the broken ice. Stormback rose tall above the wreckage, with Cole still standing on its crown. Across the feeds, watchers sat stunned again, seeing not just power but restraint. In that quiet, the Queen came to him through a secure call. She told him the beast had not chosen him by chance. It was a guardian made to kneel only to a conscience, not to crowns or orders. She warned him that more trials would come, but also told him that in the heart of millions, hope was rising again. Cole looked across the silent field of shattered ice and burning wrecks. He held the rope against the beast's crown and felt the steady beat inside its massive body. He was only a scrap pilot who had spoken gentle to a tired creature, yet now the galaxy waited for each step he would take. The journey to the Crown World was long, but word of the bow had already arrived there before the convoy. When Cole and the war beast at last stepped into the capital square, every street and rooftop was filled with crowds. People waved banners sewn from cloth, painted shields, and even old scraps of metal with his name carved into them. To them, he was now the chosen rider, not just a salvager who had stumbled into legend.
Ow.
Cole felt the weight of eyes on him like a mountain on his chest. Queen Grace stood before the halls of stone and steel. Her voice carried through every speaker when she told her people that the war beast would not belong to a single ruler. She said it would stand as defender of humankind, and that Cole must swear to this oath. If he failed or misused the beast, she would strip him of his place in front of all. The oath was written not in hidden words, but in simple promise, that the beast would fight to shield the weak and never crush them. Cole spoke the oath with voice clear enough for every mic and speaker across the worlds. Not all men welcomed this vow. Logan Drake sat in his dark meeting room, furious as he watched the feeds. He called the oath weakness and said power was wasted if not used to strike fear. He swore no farmer boy would hold what should belong to him. He gathered his fleets again and sent word that he would burn the Union yards where the Queen's ships of mercy were built. He meant not only to steal the beast, but to break her trust in Cole, before it could grow stronger. While Drake plotted, the Queen ordered Ryan to train Cole in the ways of command. Ryan showed him how to read signals, move troops, and speak in terms soldiers would follow. Cole disliked the lessons of rank, but he saw truth in them. He said he did not need a crown, but if people were now following his steps, he could not let them walk blind. Nora worked in the forge halls, building plates and anchors to fit Stormback's massive body. Metal frames clamped into ridges until the beast shone with a living armor, like the shell of a mountain. She attached saddles and rigs so Cole could feel the beast's movement as one with his own. Olivia trained in crowded wards, refusing rest as she patched every wound, and showed her worth as both healer and fighter. When Drake made his strike, the first alarm came from the far side of the Union shipyards. Ships full of families and workers scattered while fire fell from his raiders. Steel frames split, small vessels burned, and the call for help reached the capital before the first walls collapsed. Cole climbed atop Stormback without ceremony. The Queen looked to him, her eyes commanding and steady. She did not need to say more. He gave one nod, and the beast leapt with a sound louder than thunder. The battle inside the yards turned to fire and ruin. Stormback smashed through gantries, breaking enemy machines like toys. Cole swung his hook and fought through boarders who tried to climb the beast. Nora carried a cluster of small charges, setting them against the enemy stockpiles until flames erupted in waves that cleared the docks. Ryan directed guards through speaker channels, guiding them street by street, as if he had walked those paths his whole life. Olivia turned a loading bay into a ward filled with wounded. She dragged men to safety, even as metal shards pierced her arms. Within the smoke, Mason Vaughn stormed forward once more in his new plated armor. His weapon burned bright with cruel edges, and he struck down defenders like grass. Nora faced him among the walls of scaffolds. She tricked him with sparks from her torch, shifting vents and flooding the bay with fires that blinded his mask. She struck him down with a wrench and tied him to a railing so tight that he howled in rage but could not move. Stormback roared and threw a burning carrier into the river beside the docks. The crash lifted steam so thick it veiled Cole and his companions. 2 torpedoes were dragged by the beast as snare and swung back upon the raiders until they exploded against their own fleet. The yards were saved, though many places still smoldered. The Queen arrived to see smoke rising to the skies. Workers lifted their fists to Cole and stormed back with cries of faith, stood tall on the beast's crown and raised a banner made from the scorched tarp of a saved school shuttle. He swore again the promise that the weak would be guarded and storms face down. All around him, men and women repeated the words. Across the feeds, his voice carried as if it belonged to every human heart. In that moment, Drake's threat only grew, yet so did the hope of the people. They now believed not just in the beast, but in the man who had chosen mercy, where he could have taken vengeance. Logan Drake was not finished. After his loss at the shipyards, he turned to his last plan of terror. From the ruins of hidden vaults, he took the Black Crown, a dread platform built in a darker age of war. It was a weapon meant to burn cities from orbit and tear apart fleets with its sun spears. With it, he believed no power could stand against him, not even the war beast. His fleet swore loyalty not from honor, but fear. They circled the Black Crown like wolves with sharpened teeth. In the Crown world, Queen Grace called her council. She told them they could not wait and watch. If Drake used the platform even once, whole colonies would be erased. She ordered a strike, fast and dangerous, to cut the head from the snake, before his shadow grew stronger. Ryan Cross stood tall among the guards and mapped the plan in steady voice. They would slip under the sensor arcs of the platform, fast as knives in dark, and place null anchors. Once the locks were fixed, Stormback would strike through the heart. Cole Mercer heard the plan in silence. He had never led such a charge before, yet all eyes waited on him and the beast. He gave only a nod, but his heart beat fast as storm thunder. When the fleet reached the Black Crown, the void lit up at once. The platform opened fire like the sun breaking into shards. Waves of flame cut across the dark, carving scars into the orbit. Smaller ships peeled away to carry the fire, each crew knowing they might not return. Through smoke and sparks, some ships were torn in two, yet they did not turn back. They bought seconds with their lives so that Stormback could approach. Cole held tight as the war beast launched itself into the burning field. It was like diving into the heart of storms. Asteroids shattered under its steps. Its rail-shot cry split the fire apart. Nora Lane clamped charges into place along the beast's armor, so that it consumed heat and spat it back in arcs of light. Olivia wrapped bandages with one hand while gripping her sidearm with the other, ready to move toward the wounded as soon as they landed. Stormback crashed down upon the spinal ridge of the Black Crown. Iron screamed and walls buckled under its weight. Cole leapt down with his hook and drove forward among the smoke. Ryan directed squads with clipped orders. Soldiers cut paths through corridors filled with fire, each hall a trap of steel and blood. Sparks rained like metal rain as drills and rifles crossed in brutal sound. Mason Vaughn waited for them in the engine vault. His armor was thicker than before, and his batons spat arcs of crackling power. He taunted Cole about the mercy shown at Ridgeway. Cole did not answer with words. They clashed in the red glow of the reactor. Every strike rattled the chamber. Vaughn forced him back again and again, but Cole used his balance like always, reading the motion of floor and machine. At last, Vaughn reached for a control at his belt to trigger a dead man's charge. Before he could push it, Nora fired her pistol. Sparks burst from the switch as Vaughn stumbled. She struck his arm with her wrench and bound him to a railing, while Cole pressed forward. Far above, Ryan reached the control pit and placed the null anchor. His voice called, each timing like the beat of a drum. Olivia dragged a wounded child through smoke, her uniform torn and blood on her side. Yet she refused to stop until the child was breathing steady in her arms. She went onward, slower but firm. Then Drake himself appeared in the core. He carried a long lance filled with energy, old yet deadly. He aimed it not only at Cole, but at Stormback itself, hoping to turn the beast mad with pain. Stormback trembled and roared, nearly breaking loose. Cole steadied it with hand on crown and with a voice that spoke not orders, but reminder of oath. The beast calmed, though its body bled sparks. Drake and Cole met on a catwalk above the reactor glow. Their duel was harsh and close, knives and fists slamming in rhythm with the hum of the core. Drake fought with speed, born of rage. Cole fought with simple footing and spirit. When the catwalk swayed, he used the motion, slamming Drake into the braces. The blade flew from Drake's hand, fell toward the edge, but clawed to hang on. With one final strike, Stormback crushed the anchor of the catwalk, sealing the hatch before the reactor burst. The Black Crown went silent, its guns dimmed like lamps fading. Across the stars, the feed showed the impossible again. The war beast and its rider had faced the strongest weapon of mankind and broken it. Drake fled with only a handful, swearing he would return at King's Reach. His fury was not ended, but the galaxy had already seen enough to know change had begun. Cole stood once more on the beast's brow beneath the smoke, scarred but steady, and all who watched knew the fight was not yet over. Logan Drake escaped from the fall of the Black Crown with fire still burning across his ships. His anger burned brighter than the wreckage left behind. He swore he would never bow to a farmer boy or a queen. He gathered what was left of his armies and pulled them back to King's Reach, an old fortress world filled with tall walls, heavy cannons, and layers of shields. There he waited, daring the Queen to come to him, sent messages across the feeds saying he would break every dome on the Crown World if the war beast was not delivered to him. His words spread like poison, but they only proved his cruelty. Queen Grace stood tall before her people. She spoke calmly and said there could be no peace while Drake still held power. If they let him keep his fortress, he would strike again until only ruins remained. She called every ship still able to fight. Farmers, workers, and healers all raised their hands to do their part. The war would end at King's Reach. Cole Mercer heard the words and mounted Stormback once more. He did not feel like a hero, but he knew now he could not step away. Too many people had seen the bow. Too many looked to him for hope. Nora Lane worked without rest, fixing Stormback's armor and shaping its scales with her tools, until sparks lit the halls of the forges. Olivia heart-packed supplies, bandages, and medicines, knowing she would be needed in more than one place. Ryan Cross sharpened the plan until every move was measured like a blade's edge. Together they set out for the last battle. When the fleet reached King's Reach, the world itself seemed to spit fire. Cannons on the surface struck from every angle, throwing lines of flame against the sky. Drake's ship spread wide, ready to crush the Queen's forces between them. Ryan did not waste a second. He split the Union fleet into two fast groups, knives and anvils as he called them. The knives cut deep into the sensor towers and brought the shields down. The anvils moved steady, spreading the fire with Storm back at the center. The opening clash shook the sky above the fortress world. Small ships burned as they fell, breaking apart like fire falling down a mountain. Still, they did not turn back. They wove through the fire and gave Cole and Storm back the opening they needed. The beast roared and stormed forward, its scales blazing with the heat of strikes, but holding strong. Cole held tight to the crown ridge as the war beast leapt through the rain of fire. On the groundwalkers of siege rolled toward a dome filled with families. Livia saw the threat and refused to stay back. She jumped into a crawler and aimed it straight at the lead walker. With steady hands, she steered through fire and struck the machine at the causeway. The crawler flipped, metal bent, but the walker tumbled with it and broke apart. Livia crawled free, blood running down her face, and guided survivors to safety. At the fortress walls, Stormback did not wait for gates to open. It crashed through stone and iron with a roar that shook the towers. Inside, Cole leapt from its back and faced men who tried to hold the keep. Steel rang, guns fired, but they were pushed back by the force of Storm and Will. Finally, Cole reached the grand hall where Drake waited. Drake stood with an energy lance in his hand. His eyes burned with hate. He called Cole a thief who had stolen his fate. The two charged. Sparks flew as blade met hook and fist met fist. The battle raged across broken stones, each strike echoing through the hall. Drake was fast and cruel, but Cole was steady. Every movement an answer rather than a waste. The war beast smashed its claws against the walls, shaking the hall, but not striking until Cole called in his heart for its strength. Drake cut him across the arm, yet Cole pressed on. He timed his steps with the sway of the broken floor, driving Drake into a brace. The lance fell from his grip. Drake reached for a control, but before he could strike again, Queen Grace walked into the hall through the smoke. With her pistol, she shot the remote from his hand. She stared at him with calm eyes. Ryan and his guards stormed forward and pressed Drake to the ground. The warlord was finished. Stormback lowered its head inside the shattered keep. It bowed before the queen, and then again to Cole. Across the feeds the image spread once more, and people rose from their seats in streets and homes, some even in tears. They knew the fight was finally done. The queen promised amnesty to those who had been forced into Drake's armies. She promised trials for those who had led the cruelty. She announced a new league, guarded not by fear but by duty. Cole looked up at Stormback and felt the weight of the choice he had made. When he first spoke soft words to it, the beast had bowed not to strength, but to a heart that believed in something greater. When the fire settled, Cole returned to the quiet of the glass ring. Children approached Stormback and fed it sweets, laughing as it lowered its great head to them. Behind smoke and scars lay peace, and behind peace, the promise of tomorrow. The galaxy had watched a farmer boy ride into legend, and for the first time in many lives, they believed the future was theirs to hold.